Okay, so good evening, everyone. My name's Aneesa, Kathree.
And my
I'm,
name is Vuthlarhi Shirindza.
and we will be your host this evening. Welcome to RSN's Navigating Burnout and Stress panel discussion. This year has been a whirlwind of changes affecting every aspect of our lives, from social situations to general livelihood. And students all over the world have equally been affected in this regard.
From working 9 to 5 to shifting onto an online platform, the students of the Faculty of Health Sciences had to adjust their mindset of how they learn, how they engage with their curriculum, how they write exams, and reaching out for support as well, be it mental health support or academic support. So for some, this mindset adjustment did not come easy, and they had limited support through this adjustment, adding on to the struggles and concerns during a worldwide pandemic and economic crisis. So we have been witnessing students experience burnout prior to their final exam period that lies just ahead of them, and we felt it necessary to have a conversation around this burnout.
Today, we are joined by a panel of students and professionals that advocate for mental health, and we will be discussing burnout and stress in our current environment and how we as students can combat it. Without further ado, let's start with some introductions. First and foremost, we are joined by the South African Depression and Anxiety Group Operations Manager, Vanishaa Gordhan, who will be telling us more about burnout and stress later. Please introduce yourself.
Sorry, the new age of unmuting yourself and then the button doesn't work. Hi, I'm Vanishaa Gordhan. I'm the operations manager at SADAG, and I run a lot of the special projects, a lot of the projects that have to do with the Discovery Medical Student and Young Doctor Helpline, with the various universities like the UCT Student Helpline, as well as our newly launched, or not so new, but launched in June, Healthcare Workers Care Network that offers medical students, the medical fraternity, all the resources, the necessary resources that was always needed and right now is put into action.
Thank you so much.
So our next panelist is Sharon Mogale. She's a fifth-year medical student at the UCT Faculty of Health Sciences and also the 2019-2020 chairperson of the Health Sciences Students' Council. Please may you introduce yourself, Sharon, and why you advocate for mental health.
Hi, Vuthlarhi. Thank you so much for that lovely introduction. So, like you've already said, I'm a fifth-year medical student and a student leader at the same time. And one of the things that I've realized is the importance of having balance in everything that we do, and how even in trying to maintain that balance, we often find ourselves in situations where our mental health is compromised. So, having been a student leader and chairperson of an organization, leading people, you realize the importance of, recognizing the importance of mental health within a group dynamic, especially when you work with people who are students who are also under pressure to perform academically and also maintain, their roles in the different student governance roles that they play. So, being in that space, it was really important, for me to be aware of the different, signs that I may recognize from my team members and also from other students, to know when people are really struggling, and to also, recognize those signs for myself, to know when I'm struggling and I actually need help. And also, in trying to ensure that, academics are balanced with those type of responsibilities. So definitely mental health, makes up a big part, has made up a big part of my life, particularly in my role in student governance, and now continuing into, SRC. I think one of our number one priorities as a team this year is just making sure that, we prioritize mental health and, our group dynamics and how we interact with each other. So yeah, thank you so much for the invitation. Looking forward to the discussion.
Thank you so much, Sharon.
So next we are joined by Khanyisa Makhubela, a fifth-year medical student at UCT Faculty of Health Sciences and is an avid medical vlogger. Tell us more about yourself and why mental health advocacy.
Okay, hi everyone. Thank you so much for that introduction and for having me. So my name is Khanyisa Makhubela, and I'm a digital content creator. So I create content on Instagram and YouTube as well. And then outside of that, I'm a fifth-year medical student here at UCT, and I am an advocate for rest. So I'm very, very passionate about advocating for mental health, and particularly in students, because I've experienced or realized that as students, there are a lot of expectations that a lot of different people have of us. So there are expectations that the university or the faculty has of us, and outside of just being an academic entity, we're social beings as well. So on a day-to-day, expected to be seeing patients, to be doing certain investigations, so doing bloods, doing case reports, going home, studying, and then I still have to balance my personal life outside of that as well. So I truly believe that to be able to do my best, I need to be at my best mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually as well. So that's why I'm very passionate about advocating that people are well mentally, so that you can be able to excel in your academics and in just every aspect of your life. And yeah, that's why I'm very passionate about that.
Thank you, Khanyisa.
Thank you.
And last but definitely not least, we're joined by Leago Sebesho, a fifth-year medical student at the UCT Faculty of Health Sciences, and also a known mental health advocate who has spoken extensively on the topic. Leago, please tell us more about yourself and why you advocate for mental health.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Vuthlarhi, for the wonderful introduction. I'm very honored to be on the panel with the people that I'm on the panel with. Absolutely love them. So as mentioned, my name is Leago Sebesho. I'm a fifth-year medical student. I've served in a couple of university student governance structures, such as the Health Sciences Student Council and the Student Parliament. And I'm very passionate about youth development, and I'm passionate about creating access to healthcare for vulnerable groups of people. And that also includes mental health care. So the reason why I advocate for mental health is because growing up, I always thought that people who had issues with their mental health or just a mental health crisis was very far removed from my reality, until I got to UCT and I experienced anxiety for the first time. And I remember that one of the biggest things that I struggled with was not having the language to actually describe my experience, right? And once I got empowered to get that language, I then was empowered to seek help. Had language to call my situation by name. And so what I'm passionate about is creating a situation whereby I am going to tell stories and listen to other people's stories so as to allow them to be able to be empowered the same way that I was empowered, so that they can have language to actually seek help as well. And I also think that advocacy is important when it comes from a place of experience, so that you can advocate for people in such a way that you tell them a story and they can relate to it, and you empower them through them understanding that they're not alone. And that's actually enough, and that's actually good enough.
Thank you so much for all those introductions, and thank you all for joining us today.
So burnout is not something exclusive. Anyone can experience it. In our field, as health sciences students, we are more prone to the harsh realities of this world. And as students, we are exposed to these realities and stresses at an earlier stage of life than others. Knowing this, there's a need to protect ourselves against these stresses and know what help is available to us, and how we can better the system to prevent this from affecting our future students. So I'm now going to ask Vanishaa to give us a quick overview on burnout and stress.
Hi. So I just wanted to give a quick intro as to who SADAG is. So SADAG is the South African Depression and Anxiety Group, and we started initially 26 years as a support group where our founder actually struggled with panic, and it took her 10 years to discover that she actually had panic disorder. And she realized that if she doesn't do something like this, how many more people are struggling to get that diagnosis? So she started the National Suicide Crisis Helpline, and SADAG grew from there. With regards to burnout and stress, I think in post-COVID, okay, no, sorry, not post-COVID, sorry, we're not there yet. During COVID now, and for us to actually manage what is going to happen in the future compared to what has happened in the past is very difficult. And I think with regards to medical students, I can only imagine the story stories I've heard with regards to medical students as well as medical doctors, young doctors, doctors who are registrars doing their they're all experiencing a different kind of stress now. As it is, pre-COVID, all of the medical students, let's be honest, our healthcare system was already strained. It was already a strained system. And now during COVID, it showed us that actually we're needing so much more resources. We're needing so much more assistance. And we need our medical fraternity to be supported in such a way where they can go the long haul and they can feel supported at every step. So stress and burnout definitely for everyone. I think it's not only medical students, it's everyone. It's all the people that have had to work in an office and now have to work at home where their sisters, their brothers, their parents, everybody is in one space. And being in the field of dealing with a lot of universities, I've also come across a lot of that have come that said, oh, I'm so sorry. My dog.
It's okay.
Oh, okay, sorry. A lot of them actually said that, like moving to an online way of learning has just been horrible. It's been absolutely difficult. Not only do they not have the resources, but they're struggling with even having that space. At their res, they had this desk, they had their space. This is my study place. And really, you sit there and you study. Whereas now it's completely different. So everybody is going to experience more stress. Everybody is going to feel overwhelmed. A lot of people who never experience anxiety and wait, I'm going to get your name so wrong, but I'm going to call the pretty lady with the very beautiful earrings. I'm going to say that, you never experienced anxiety before, but when you got to university, that's what you experienced. And that's going to be the same thing that's happened now, whereas a lot of people who never experienced heart, palpitations, feeling that stress, having trouble breathing, having a panic attack and not being aware of what it is. So it's so important to have the awareness, have the information, have the knowledge, so you also know what it is and you can also share that information with others. On our Healthcare Workers Care Network, there's a lovely video series which everybody and anybody should definitely go watch, medical fraternity or not. It explains burnout, it explains stress, it explains coping skills. The coping skills become very important because if we don't notice, I'm feeling stressed today, then it's only going to get worse as time goes by. So if you're feeling overwhelmed, if you're feeling like you're not eating and you're not sleeping like how you used to, maybe even you don't even feel like talking to your friend that you always confided in. You want to be alone, you isolate yourself, you think, if I just finish this set of work, I'll be done and then I'll be sorted and I'll feel better. But that's not always the case. I think it's important to take breaks. It's important to know that I'm feeling overwhelmed. My heart is beating a little bit faster. My breath is a bit more erratic. Maybe I need to just take a moment, reset. So take a break, take a step back and actually realize that, now, even if I take a 3-minute song break, it makes a difference. Okay, so take a breath. I know I always say this, and I say this in actually a lot of my webinars and a lot of the places that I talk at. It's do that 3-minute break. You put your data off. You put your, so your WhatsApps don't come beaming in, your emails don't come, ting, ting, ting. That creates a lot of stress. So put your data off. You put a 3-minute song, a song that you like, a song that you can, like that you resonate with. It can be anything, anything. You literally put that on, close your eyes for that 3 minutes, and you actually just focus on that. You focus on your breathing, you focus on the way you're feeling and how that song makes you feel. And I promise you, when you get back into your space, you have a different perspective. And it's just that chance to give your mental state and your actual feelings to reset and start afresh. I hope that helps.
Thank you so much for that, Aneesa. And thank you for the practical advice as well. So now moving on to a more student perspective, and this is a question I'd like to pose to the students, like what can we do as students to combat to combat burnout and stress in our setting, be it practical advice or advocating for better mental health care for, our patients or our friends and family in SA. Like, what practical things have helped you that you think could be beneficial to others? Leago, you can go first.
Thanks, Vuthlarhi, for the question. It's a very loaded question because a lot can be done. But the first thing, because obviously this is an academic context, I just want to say that the first thing that I think about is that as students, we all think that you're only burnt out when you can't do your schoolwork anymore, right? And my first approach is that part of deconstructing and working towards healthier relationships with school and eventually the workplace is to understand that our academic performance cannot be what we use to ascertain our well-being, right? So for a lot of us, that's the last thing we let slip. So everything in your life will be dysfunctional, but you're like, oh my goodness, my academics are now slipping. It means that I have to intervene. Right. So if we look at like what burnout is, right, you're just exhausted emotionally, physically, and obviously it's due to like having prolonged times of stress, being under pressure for long periods of time without resting, etc. Right. So we as students, we've got this dysfunctional thing where we think that, you know what, let me sacrifice my overall well-being so that I can keep my academics afloat. So that's the first place where I want to start, is saying that actually we need to put up parameters in other spheres in our life that's not just our academics, right? So how much are you eating? How many meals a day are you eating? Are you getting enough sleep? It's the basic things. How's your communication with your family members? How are your interpersonal relationships? Because a lot of us are actually on a slippery slope to burnout, and we think that it's only when our schoolwork is affected that, okay, now I need to intervene, right? So I always think like from a medical perspective, like if you think of an example, there are a lot of illnesses where the person literally has no symptoms, but internally it is incredibly like dysfunctional, right? Mm-hmm. Someone can be in renal failure, like the kidney is actually unfunctioning, and you'll only see it on their blood work. You'll only see it on the bloods that actually, sir, in a certain amount of time, your kidney is not going to be able to, produce what it's supposed to produce and be functional and optimal. Right. So I know for myself, when I struggle to sleep or I feel exhausted at things that I usually like doing, that I ask to see, this is the parameter that I use to say, I think you need to intervene. I think you need to rest. And I know that my cup needs to be filled again. Right. So then that takes me to my second point, is that a lot of us are scared to take the time to fill our cups because the pressures of school aren't going to wait for you to be okay. And the general narrative is that I'll deal with it at the end of the year. Or when I have a less hectic block, I'll go see that psychologist. Or yeah, let me just shelve that problem because I actually don't have time to deal with it, right? And I always think of an analogy around a wounded shoulder. A wounded soldier. A wounded soldier is better off stopping and attending to an injury and being able to go further with his team than a soldier who's limping the entire way, is slowing down not only themselves, but also the people around them, right? So what I mean by this is that cumulatively, your injured self is actually less optimal and less functional than a self that has actually taken time to rest and fill your cup, right? But it also takes awareness to do that. You can't know that your cup is empty if you actually don't even know your parameters, which is what I'm speaking about in my first point, that do you even know when you're not okay? Because the thing is with burnout is it's a gradual process. You're not going to wake up one day and just be like, I'm burnt out, which is what actually happens. But I mean, what I'm saying is that it's not something that just comes like this. It's a gradual process of things and you not giving yourself rest and you're not filling your cup, right? So, it comes to my point around awareness. But simultaneously, I must say that I think the underlying idea for me is that we actually need to be kind to ourselves too, in that you need to allow yourself to actually rest, but also allow yourself to feel certain emotions. In other words, what I mean by that is that there are some times in our lives where we're actually in anxious and stressful situations, and those emotions are very normal. It's okay to be anxious before a big exam. It's okay to feel stressed in very stressful situations. Sharon can tell you when she was campaigning for SRC, she was probably very stressed, and she was under a lot of pressure to become, the person that she is. And those are normal emotions, but actually having the awareness to understand what is normal and what is not, right? A lot of us convince ourselves that our normality is functional or vice versa. You'll tell yourself, no, guys, this is how I've always been my whole life. But actually, you're living in dysfunction, right? And then my last thing is, no, not my last thing, my second last thing is about the system. Vuthlarhi, your question was around how can we advocate for better mental health care access, and just in general, discussing the discourse around mental health care is actually understanding that we all exist in a system, and us students, we exist in an institution that is UCT, right? So we must ask ourselves the questions: what is the institutional culture that gatekeeps poor mental health outcomes among students? And for me, it's actually the elephant in the room when I see the universities increasing, mental health care capacity, etc. And it's all beautiful, and it's incredible strides, and they are important strides, right? But simultaneously, there needs to be an interrogation on what are the systemic things that exist in our spaces, be it how the doctors treat us, how the nurses treat us, or how we relate to each other as a profession with other healthcare workers, that actually gatekeep poor mental health care. How does the university deal with financial exclusions? How does the university deal with race-related issues? What are the cultures that are cultivated in our residences? Those are systemic things that, even beyond what you can do for yourself, those are things that will be plotting against you and your well-being, right? So beyond what we can do for ourselves and what we can do for each other, the system needs to support us, not just in giving us access to mental health care, but actually preventing us from even getting to a point where I'm in an unnecessarily anxiety and stress-provoking situation. I also think about how we can support each other as students. I always believe that the power of storytelling is what's going to take us forward in the mental health care discourse, right? So telling people about how I feel, what happens when I'm anxious, what have I done, what happened when I had a panic attack, what are the things I said to myself, what are the affirmations, and when I did seek help, who did I see, how did I find therapy, People have this perception that therapy is like therapeutic, and it actually isn't. You get back from therapy and you have a lot of work to do, and it's difficult and it's uncomfortable. And telling people those things actually validates, oh, actually, I thought I was supposed to feel better after therapy, but I may feel worse. And that's actually okay, right? Speaking to our juniors about how do you manage your workload? How did you deal with your first failure? Because you will fail certain things in medicine and in university in general, but I'm speaking from my context that you will fail those things. And how did you bounce back up? So my narrative is that I should not have to struggle the way that I've struggled for somebody that I'm walking through life with to struggle in the same way. There needs to be a difference between somebody who's coming after me and me. It cannot be the same thing. And then my last little tip on how we can actually advocate for better mental health amongst each other is that actually we need to promote a culture of backing ourselves and backing each other, affirming each other and affirming ourselves. You come into this space of university and you feel like you don't know enough, you're not good enough. I know that in medicine, with the culture and the hierarchy, we often feel like, I'm not good enough, I don't know enough. And just imagine when that culture of bashing people meets you not affirming yourself and you not knowing how incredible you are, and that you actually deserve to be where you are, you deserve to be in that space, you're good enough, you are going to pass and you are going to get that qualification. But if you have the exact opposite and you're not affirming those things by yourself, when that meets the bashing, it can just further exacerbate that burnout. Because when you're burnt out, you feel like, I'm not good enough, nothing I do is enough, my efforts are useless. And then on top of that, someone's going to say that to you, right? So we actually just need to back ourselves and back each other so that in this culture and these institutions that we exist in, we can at least be at a better starting point instead of behind the starting point. Yeah.
Wow, thank you so much for that, Leago. I think you've just captured it so beautifully. And I think those are such helpful tips that anyone can use, whether you're a student, whether you're working, varsity or not. And just thank you so much for just capturing that so beautifully for us. Sharon, what would you say is some helpful tips that students can use, whether they're advocating for their friends, whether they're advocating for themselves or for the system in general?
Thank you so much, Vuthlarhi, and thank you, Leago, for that brilliant description and just brilliant description of how this the system, how mental health, is very it intersects different sectors of our student lives and our personal lives as well. For me, I think actually what's interesting is that I did a presentation on burnout and balancing multiple responsibilities for faculty councils this year because I felt it was such a big part of students, particularly students in our faculty, students who are so you know, like talented and involved in a lot of things. Like it's rare you find a student in the Faculty of Health Sciences who's not in Shoko, who's not in some committee doing something. And in that, in as much as we struggle, you know, to overcome a lot of challenges that we experience on the clinical platform, or in terms of like, you know, balancing content with our balancing academic content with our personal lives. I think the most important thing for me was coming out of this year was like, how do I maintain like my professional self, you know, maintain those goals that I want to achieve at the same time without compromising my mental health, and also not, you know, compromising on the job that needs to be done, because at the end of the day, there were responsibilities that I had, and some of the things that really helped me was knowing the science, like the parameters that Leago spoke of. Actually, now that she was like talking about it, I realized, oh, my parameters are actually like a further apart, further away, more like, you know, maybe like late stage when you start, you know, having like warning signs, like you've missed a couple of meetings, or you've missed some emails, or you like literally submitted when the deadline was really close, or, you know, the team starts to, you know, say like, starts complaining. Those are the sort of like parameters I set for myself, you know, being a team leader, and, you know, recognizing when the team is struggling that much because, you know, the leader's not, you know, feeling well, or not like working to like the optimal level. But also like interpersonal relationships, you know, when you start missing a lot of the events and you start feeling distant as well, and you start feeling overwhelmed by being around people in general, because like being a student leader and just being involved in a lot of things, you're always around people, and also maybe that feeling of just, you know, like those people are like people that you're supposed to be close with, you know, you feed off their energy as well, but at sometimes like you feel very exhausted, you know, being around them. And that's like, for me, that was like really one of the warning signs that I had for myself. And I think the tips that really helped me was to, you know, ensure that I had systems around me to protect myself from, you know, falling into the cracks. So for instance, like with my academics, I had conversations with course conveners, and I had conversations with people who were in the previous blocks as me, just to find out like how did they navigate that space, so that I make sure, you know, that in terms of workload, can I manage having these many responsibilities at the same time, doing this very challenging block, or can I manage, you know, taking on a very heavy project, or taking on a heavy committee, knowing that it's going to be such a challenging block, and also, yeah, letting your course conveners know that, you know, I'm doing this, I have these many responsibilities, and, you know, sometimes I may like slip up or like miss 1 or 2 sessions. How do I make up for that? And they also tell you, you know, this is how you can, you know, manipulate your timetable to suit your responsibilities as well. And that really helped me. And I think in terms of, you know, work balance as well, recognizing that in whatever you're doing, like you're working as a team, and you also have your classmates to support you. And like knowing when to delegate was really important. Knowing when to set when to take leave and set reminders on your emails is also very important, because emails do get like really overwhelming. And also the thing of like social media was really overwhelming as well, because then like that you give people so much access to yourself on social media, and you need to know how to limit that as well. Because I felt like it also got really overwhelming just being on social media. Sometimes it does get overwhelming. It's not even about the notifications. It's just like trying to keep up with what's happening all the time and what's going on. And like during the pandemic, that really got overwhelming, because there's always different statistics, different things about what's going on, how many people are dying, and even like having people who are dying in your like own like personal capacity. Like I lost some people during the pandemic as well, and you know, like those things got quite overwhelming, and it was really important to know when to switch off, like stay off social media, and also like, you know, put reminders on your emails, and just, you know, at least have some bit of like energy left over to like focus on academics, which is, you know, the primary reason of being at UCT. For me, I always felt like I need to just, you know, in anything that I'm doing, if there's something that I can switch off, then I will switch off and just focus the little energy that I have into just, you know, putting it into academics. And also in terms of interpersonal relationships, like it's really important to like communicate your aspirations, your visions, and what you're currently like working on with your like friends, family, or whoever you're in a relationship with, so that they know that, you know what, this person has a lot of demands on their plates. Like there's meetings that you have to attend to, there's committees that you have to attend to, so that they know that they have to support you, and also understand that, you know, you're not going to be available for every outing, for every event, but also know that, you know, they can pull you out of that space when they feel like, you know, I can see, you know, she's struggling, so let me take her out. Let me, you know, let's organize something as friends, you know, and do something. So it's important to those responsibilities, added responsibilities that you have, because your support system is actually, your friends are your biggest support system, and your family as well. So you need those people to be aware of the situation that you're in, and not just find yourself overwhelmed and having people not understand why, because it's important to communicate that, you know, this is what I'm doing, medicine, you know, or whatever, you know, physios, you know, right now I'm busy with my thesis, I'm busy with my project, I'm busy with design or whatever. This is very difficult for me. It's a challenging week, so let people know, and also like communicate. Communicating was really important, you know, on a personal level and on a professional level. So pretty much that's like the things that really helped me navigate, you know, academic life and student leadership life this year. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you so much, Sharon. I think those are really such helpful tips. And I hadn't even thought of, like, you know, telling your friends like, okay, wow, I'm actually going through this, so please do understand if I can't make it to your birthday, or, you know, if I can't make the TAD, please take notes for me. It's practical things like that that I think a lot of people will find really helpful. Khanyisa, what would you like to share on, you know, how we can navigate the mental health space as students, as family members, as workers? Like, what helpful tips do you have to share for people who will be listening to this?
Thank you so much, Vuthlarhi, for the question. I do have 3 tips I want to share. I just want to share my screen. I don't know if you guys can see it now.
Yes, we can.
Okay. Cool. So the first tip I have is that you must be kind to yourself. So 2020, to be honest, has been a very difficult year. It's been a difficult year for the entire world. It's been difficult for families, for businesses, for people's finances, and also for our academics as students. So we've had to adjust to an entirely new way of learning, an entirely new way of interacting with our lecturers. And that in itself can induce a lot of stress in a person. And I think it's important to remind yourself that the amount of stress that we've experienced this year on its own is not normal, and the way in which I'm reacting, the way in which I'm feeling stressed, or the way in which I'm feeling burnt out is a normal response to the stress that we've experienced. So it's important that you be kind to yourself, and before you can start taking any necessary steps or any initiatives in taking care of your mental health, I think it's important to acknowledge that this has been a difficult year. And I put this picture here just so that, because it's very cute, and this person is giving themselves a hug because we're in a pandemic and you can't give other people hugs. So before you start taking any steps, just give yourself a hug. Remind yourself that it's normal that I'm feeling this way. This year has been difficult on everyone, and yeah, just be kind to yourself. And then the second tip I have is you should integrate rest into your daily schedule. So what I find has helped me is that whenever I'm planning for my week, I always put all my different commitments into a calendar, and I always make sure that I integrate rest into that daily schedule. So the time that I've set aside for rest is strictly for rest. It's not time for me to quickly watch an osmosis video on this topic that I didn't understand. It's not time to quickly read up on a certain chapter in the textbook. It's time that is entirely for me. It's time for me to do things that I enjoy. And for me, what that looks like is watching soapies, cooking, talking to my family, talking to my friends. And it's important that I set aside time that's strictly Khanyisa. On a Monday from 5 o'clock till 7 o'clock, you're doing things that you enjoy. So yeah, you should schedule rest into your daily routine. And then I was live on Instagram about a week ago, and one of the people were asking me how to deal with the guilt that comes with resting. And the response I gave to that was that to be able to do your best, you need to be at your best, right? And to be at my best personally, I need to rest. So rest is a form of me being productive, because I know that as I'm resting, as soon as my resting time is done, I'm going to be as efficient and I'm going to be as productive as I could have been. So there's no need for me to be feeling guilty. Rest is part of my schedule and it's part of me being productive. And it's not something that you should be ashamed of. It's not something that you should feel bad for doing. It's very important that you're resting. And then the third one, I think Leago and Sharon have spoken to this point a bit as well, but you should know your breaking point. So my clinical partner likes to use the phrase, these are signs and symptoms of a tired student. And I think what I like so much about that phrase is that you've identified what you look like when you're tired or when you're about to burn out. And as soon as you've identified what that looks like for you, you know that you need to take initiative. You need to take the necessary steps to prevent that point of burnout. And for me personally, what that looks like, as soon as I see my dishes in the kitchen starting to pile up, as soon as I see that I'm not reading my Bible as much as I usually do, that's when I realize, no, I'm actually feeling tired. I'm actually feeling burnt out. And I'll know at this point I need to take a break. I need to take a day off because I don't want to reach that point of burnout. So yeah, the important 3 tips I have is you should be kind to yourself, firstly. Secondly, you should make sure that you're integrating rest into your daily schedule, and you should know your breaking point so that you can do something about it. And always feel free to ask for help. So if you can see that I'm reaching burnout and I don't know what to do about it, you should always feel free to ask for help. And yeah, that's what I had to share.
Thank you so much for those 3 tips, Khanyisa. I'm sure, I think in identifying what a tired student looks like, it's so important to personalize it to you, because for others, it's when the dishes start to pile up, but for others, it's when you're not answering to WhatsApp texts or you just don't have time for anything at all. But thank you so much to all the panelists for those helpful tips. So we'd now like to ask if you have any final comments or advice that you'd like to express. Maybe an add-on on what someone has said that you'd like to build up on. Anyone can go ahead. Yes, Vanishaa?
Hi, so I found this extremely enlightening, because this is actually students that are speaking about things like reducing stigma, sort of creating that awareness and knowing that, if I'm feeling this way, I need to reach out. And that's the one thing I think that us from the helplines or from the resources, and I think I sent Aneesa a few resources, and I'm happy to send you more. And I've sent you also that new webinar that's happening soon on burnout and how you're doing. I think that would be also super useful. And it's so lovely to know that you guys are sharing the information, you acknowledging the fact that, when you feel stressed, this is what you're doing, so that everyone else can also say, we're starting the conversation, because that's where it starts. It starts with that conversation. It starts with the stories. When one medical student shares their story and explains how they've experienced this and what they've done to actually help themselves, it makes the other medical students that might feel, like I can't share my information. I can't share the fact that I'm feeling overwhelmed. As you mentioned, your relationships are failing. I'm not going to share that. I'm not going to share the fact that, I'm studying all night and not resting. I'm not going to share the fact that I'm not eating enough during the day. And that's where I think it becomes more and more difficult for that person to manage. And I think once you start this conversation and open up these stories, you're going to have so many more people saying, it's okay to not be okay, and it's okay to actually ask for help. And I think that's where all of this comes from. And I think this is absolutely wonderful. It was enlightening for me to actually listen to other people's stories that are part of the university, that are part of, the student community. It's brilliant. Thank you so much. You guys have actually made me think about a lot today.
Thank you so much for those thoughts, Vanishaa. Would anyone like to pick up on that?
Yeah, just a final thought from my side was Vanishaa said something about just combating the stigma around mental health. And I think coming from a community, I know that within Black communities, not only is it very little awareness about what it is. But when we do know that someone is mentally ill, there's a lot of stigma around it, right? But to the point where, like, it's almost like this elephant in the room that nobody wishes to acknowledge. Because, I mean, you see dysfunctionality, the likelihood is that there are a lot of people who actually aren't okay in their circumstance. But the main point for me that I really, really just wanted to share is that it's actually in our stories that we're going to win the battle against mental health, because people relate to heart and emotion and struggle when it's other people, and understanding that they aren't struggling alone. So I think it's important for us, even as advocates, to actually tell our stories of the things that we've struggled with, and not have this thing of, I need to keep up this persona of being okay and having it put all together. I'm like, guys, actually, I'm very messed up and I'm very dysfunctional sometimes, and that's okay. And that gives someone language, and also gives someone the heart and understanding emotionally that actually, if I'm not okay, it doesn't mean that there's something inherently wrong with me. It's just the struggles that I'm dealing with. I like what Khanyisa said, where she said, it's actually a pandemic, guys. No one is okay. And everyone's scared to say it, but we actually aren't okay. And my heart even feels lighter just sharing a space where people are like, I'm actually not okay. Because just that, it does so much work for your heart to say that, okay, cool, we're not all okay, and then we can get help all together, and we can speak about what we're struggling with and help each other, recommend, this is the therapist you saw, or this is if for the people who need to be on a medication, this is the benzodiazepine that I was on for my anxiety, and it helped me in this way. Like, we need to be having open conversations where, when you're in a room full of people and you're like, yeah, guys, my therapist said, there's still that thing of like, oh, you're in therapy, what's wrong? And it's like, no, I'm actually in therapy because I talk to someone every week about the good and the bad in my life, So just in our storytelling, it will empower people to do better and be better.
I think, can I add something? So just also to speak on like what Leago was saying with regards to storytelling and so on, I think it's very important as we share our experiences, especially as medical students, we shouldn't glamorize not resting, right? So when I entered med school in first year, before I became a YouTuber, I would YouTube medical students and just different medical school bloggers. And what I would realize is that these people are always working. They're never speaking about when they take time off from themselves. They're glamorizing, oh, I slept 2 hours last night. I slept 3 hours. Oh, I didn't get to sleep. So we must be very careful of how we share our experiences with other people, because then if the only story I'm hearing from other med students is that I didn't get enough sleep, I then start to feel like I start to feel bad about the rest that I take, because every single night I watch soapies and that's my rest time. So then when people tell me that I didn't sleep, I was studying 10 chapters, I start to feel very bad and overwhelmed with the schoolwork. So I think it's important that when we share our experiences with other people, we're actually honest, and we emphasize that rest is important and you don't have to be studying 24/7. You should take time for yourself, and yeah, that's it.
Also, now I feel like I had to add something. I think on top of what everyone said, I think it's important for us to also like be advocates for mental health, like in our different spaces as healthcare professionals. Because it's not just only about us, like we're literally also like the next generation of healthcare professionals. And I see how difficult it is often having to advocate in like meetings for student breaks or like, student vacations or like extended vacations for students, because, the older, healthcare professionals sort of like don't understand the importance or like don't see the need, for students to rest or, for taking breaks in between. But I think it's really important for us, to continue on like this positive trajectory that we're on just like constantly being advocates for mental health for each other, for our colleagues, and also for our patients. And yeah, thank you so much for this opportunity. I hope there'll be more of these similar discussions because they are really helpful. And I think it would really be an eye-opener for a lot of students who didn't realize that, we need to stop normalizing dysfunction and, start, being okay with, being not okay sometimes. So thank you so much for this.
Okay, Thank you so much, Sharon. So that brings us to the end of our discussion. I will be sharing Vanisha's resources with all of you. But yeah, thank you to you guys for all your time and what you're doing for our future generations as students. And obviously being mental health advocates, like you guys all said, it's important for us to start now so that we can better the future for the people that come after us. So thank you.